Hello and welcome to Let's Talk Tactics, Episode 1, starring the Victory Class Star Destroyer. First up, the Victory Class, of course, comes in two variants. The Victory 1, sporting black dice, and the Victory 2 at an increased cost of 12 points for a total of 85, sporting blue dice. And that is the only difference. So, the Victory class can be used in multiple roles, including a carrier, but the carrier will be discussed in the fighter video, which will be uploaded at a future date. I will post a link in the description once I have that done. But the primary role that I'm going to be talking about is as a destroyer, which is as a aggressive piece that's able to deal a lot of damage but can still take a little bit in return. One second as I pull up my notes. Okay, so first off, I would like to note that the Victory class, of course being slow, but because of its brutal firepower, it has the highest damage potential in the game currently. Because of that, it must be, not must, but it should be treated as an area control piece. As in, what I mean by that is you want it to be denying your opponent from an area and not using it to destroy your opponent necessarily. Along these lines, it is possible for a Victory class to pay for itself with that 80-point investment without even firing a shot. That's, if you use it as a good area denial, it is great. This is most apparent with things like contested outpost, obviously. But even just using it as a shepherd to drive your opponent into your other ships. If you have two victories, you use one victory to steer your opponent into the other victory, and the other victory deals the killing blow. But use it as an area control piece to control where your opponents go. Moving on, let's talk about some cards that go well with the Victory. First of all, we have their titles. These three right there. Sorry about the shadows. You have Warlord. Oh my gosh, that's bad. Okay, anyway, you have Warlord. Whee! There you go. Corruptor. And Dominator. Corruptor, of course, goes with fighter list, so we'll talk about that later. First off, we'll discuss the new one, Warlord. So Warlord is great. I like it. Its ability allows you to change a accuracy into a hit, giving you that little extra damage, especially with the Victory 2 when you get extra, when you're getting over too many accuracies. But I do want to note that on red dice, you can change the accuracy into a double hit. So on a red dice, when you get that straight accuracy, it gives you 2 extra hits, which is pretty great. And because of this ability to change accuracies into a double hit, means that Warlord combos with this H9 turbo lasers. So H9 allows you to change. I'll give you a good look at that. Ooh, define good look, you say. Okay. Hopefully there was a focus frame in there somewhere, right? Anyway, H9 allows you to change a hit or a crit, there it exists somewhere, into an accuracy. So this means whenever you roll a hit or a crit, say you have 5 hits and the enemy has a brace, well, you'd rather lose one of those hits to go to an accuracy to prevent the brace from taking away 2 damage. So that's what that's, used for. But with the combination of Warlord, every time you roll, I can now change my basic hit into an accuracy, and then use Warlord to flop that to a double hit. It means consistently, every time you roll red dice, you're going to add 1 damage, pretty much no matter what. Unless you roll 3 blanks, at which point you should just resign then. So here, example, long range, victory rolls, he gets a double hit and 2 crits. Obviously, you can only resolve 1 critical effect, so we're going to modify that crit to accuracy using H9, and this one to a double hit, for a total of 5 damage. Or you could always leave that as an accuracy if that suits your need better. But that's just for example. So this means if you're looking for long range firepower, take a Victory 2 with Warlord and H9, really ramps up your long range firepower. Actually, this can be a Victory 1 too, because this primarily works on red dice. And then if you want to amp it up even more, throw an Intel Officer. For those of you that don't know, Intel Officer allows you to use it once every turn to basically force an enemy to discard a token, a defense token, if they spend it. So say they have a brace that's green, normally you could just flip that to red and you'd be fine. With Intel Officer, you can use Intel Officer to prevent them from using that brace, or else they spend it. It basically makes the token be red for 1 attack. But that's really good. It can add extra damage and then cause them to replace, to discard tokens. Moving on, we have Dominator. Dominator, most of you should be aware, allows you to spend 2 shields from any face to add up to 2 blue dice for each attack. So this applies to both attacks, every turn. Warlord and H9 apply to all attacks too, by the way. But that applies to both attacks. I prefer to put Dominator on my Victory 1, because then I can add the black dice with the blue dice, which is a really good combination. Get that high damage mixed with those accuracies. And then it's cheaper. Obviously, Dominator is 12 points, so it's expensive. And this brings it up to the same cost as a normal Victory 2, which I consider pretty good. Normally with Dominator, I don't like to put anything on it, just because it kind of gets expensive, and Dominator's obviously doing damage to itself, so it can die very quickly. But if you do put something, I highly recommend Wolf Yalerin, who allows you to, once per turn, when you spend a token, you can use him to keep that token. So what I do with this is take an engineering token, and then you just every turn you regenerate 1 shield. Using him and that 1 engineering token, and then your commands can be off normal. You can use them for even concentrate fire. Obviously, you're primarily going to want to do engineering, but anyway, that helps. Other than that, something along these lines, and obviously with the corruptor and those stuff being in a different video, other than something along these 2 builds, I generally don't recommend doing much except just a basic Victory. You can throw on Enhanced Armament, it's always a good upgrade, and Intel Officer goes with everything. I love Intel Officer. A Wolf is obviously good, but just like kind of a basic VSD, I wouldn't recommend putting much more than 20 points onto a Victory. When using Victories, you definitely want to bring Grand Moff Tarkin. He is expensive, but he's the best for Victories. He's really good with Victories, and makes them shine, makes them do 5 commands a turn, basically. Not 5, that's obviously hyperbole, but anyway. And then, along with that, if you have Grand Moff, Weapons License and Defense License are obviously a great choice. I'll try and add a link to everything in the description. Some cards to avoid. Expanded Launchers. This is kind of tempting to put on a Victory, but to be honest, 8 dice out of your front arc is overkill, especially when 2 of those dice are never good. Probably 5 of those dice are never going to get used, because your opponent will stay out of that front arc. Yes, it adds extra area denial, but it's kind of 13 points that you're probably not even going to use. I would just recommend not doing that. I also suggest staying away from Overload Pulse with Victories. The reason for this is overload pulse is really good when you outnumber someone or you're focus firing. And with victories, you tend to usually only have 2, maybe 3 ships, which makes it very difficult for overload pulse to be effective when you're focus firing. Other than some other upgrades to consider would be leading shots. I do not have leading shots out here to show you, but again, instead of overload pulse, use intel officer. It works better for the victory. In this case, it basically does the same thing. Checking my notes one more time. I apologize. Okay, so I should have got these out. When you're doing the victory, main objectives to consider are, advanced gunnery. Hopefully you all know what that does. And another good one is contested outposts. These two go really well with the victory. So these are kind of almost auto-includes for when you have a victory in your list. Obviously, the rest of them kind of depends on what you want to do. Fire lanes could be good, just anything. Generally, you want to avoid intel sweep. But recently, I have learned of some ways you can use victories to actually win intel sweep. So it just depends. Anything's doable. Okay, so now we'll clear this up and run a quick demo. Playing with a victory. So here, this looks like a fair fight. We'll set up an enemy over here. Nope, he's giving up. Right across there. That little CR90. Yeah, that's the opponent. It's a fair fight, right? Anyway, with a victory, how I personally like to run them, you can obviously whatever suits your playstyle, but what I recommend doing is you start out at speed 2. Actually, I guess we should go over setup. So first of all, setup, I recommend setting up in the corner of the play area, or the setup area, facing inward. If you have other ships, put them facing the same way or in the middle. And let this guy drive the enemy towards your other ships. Demolisher is a good choice. Or another VSD. So anyway, I recommend setting up in the corner, and then for obstacles, try and place this guy near over here. This is where turn 5 or 6 you're going to want your victory to be. If that makes sense. So your victory moves forward, turn 4, 5, 6. Hopefully he gets to land on that and get an extra card discarded if he needs to. Set up any obstacles you have in the corners and along your flight path to kind of try and shield your victory from those flankers. Discourage this guy from going this way. That was a bad video. Discourage him from coming this way. You want him to be over here. So yeah, try and make that happen. I'm saying I'm alive. Anyway, I like to start at speed 2. Otherwise, it takes forever to get there. And then slow down to 1 once I get there. So it turns 1, 2, 3, usually speed 2, and then 3, 4, and 5, and 6, I slow down to speed 1. And obviously you're pointing at them as best you can. Try not to chase them. Lead them. Because obviously it's going to take the victory a couple turns to get there. So, for commands, I have this little diagram set up. So turn 1 and 2, you're going to be banking tokens, except for the rare case of a fleet ambush or something. These 2 turns you're not going to be engaged, you're going to be banking tokens. I recommend taking a navigate and an engineering token on these 2 turns. Pretty much always do that at the beginning of the game. These are the best tokens. You need these tokens probably. Unless you're doing squadrons, you're going to need those. But again, squadron command won't be discussed in this video very much. Turns 3, 4, and 5 are going to be when you're engaging. So start taking concentrate fire commands
And then with the victory, navigate commands to get extra yaw. Not change your speed, just get extra yaw. Use this token to change the speed if you need to for an emergency. So get that concentrate fire and that extra yaw when needed to keep them in front of you. Turn 5 and 6, if you've taken heavy damage, get that repair going to stay alive. It's very difficult to kill you, especially when you're getting these extra hit points. I usually just dump them into shields, with the exception of having a nasty crit. Just put them into shields to get, 2 extra hit points every time you take that. Also remember, you have your token from earlier to get 1 free shield, basically. And then, if you're not damaged very badly, continue taking concentrate fire commands. You're likely at long range at this point. In here is when you're going to get that close range shots, is 3, 4, maybe 5. That's when your close range shot's going to happen. That's why the navigate's important in here, to keep that shot happening. And then 5 and 6, you're probably past them at long range, using your side arcs, maybe even your back arc. So use that concentrate fire and that engineering to keep yourself alive. Moving on to my closing points. With the victory likes having the initiative, meaning first player. Generally, the objectives aren't going to hurt you too bad to not want first player. And the reason you want first player is because you have this 6 die attack. But if you're second player, this guy moves about there. You move forward, you're 2. This guy moves about, well, that's a bad example. When you have multiple ships, you're second player, you move in, you did all this work to set up this awesome shot, and then next turn, this guy just moves first and goes over here. Oh, waste of time. But if you were first player, you can activate, hopefully after him, take your awesome shot that destroys this guy before he's able to be on. Anyway, first player just helps you get that killer shot out of the way. Victories like to have first player more than most ships. I do want to note though, when doing an initiative bid, I like to take a 10-point initiative bid myself when I'm going for initiative. That will usually get you initiative. Some people go a bit further, but much more than that and you're really losing out on stuff. So I wouldn't recommend more than 10, maybe 12 if you're really desperate. But one more thing to note, if you do get initiative and your opponent has 2 more ships than you, so you bring 2 ships and they bring 4 or 5, they're probably going to be able to control the activation order anyway, and it won't make a difference that you have first player, so take second player so you can get a beneficial objective, hopefully. If you brought opening salvo or something, take first player anyway. And that's it for this article. Go through, make sure I didn't leave anything out, and thank you guys for watching, and this is Clone Trooper 5 signing out.